here. Akuta Michelle Idialu is an assistant lecturer in the Department of Mass Communication at Bingham University, Karu, here in Nigeria. She holds a master's degree from the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria, and is currently doing her PhD at Bingham University, Karu, Nasarawa State. Her research interests include media studies, digital media studies, health communication, and cultural communication. You're welcome, Akuta. Hello, Michelle. All right.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much.
And then we have Marjorie Jack Adebisi, who is a doctoral researcher at the Rivers State University, Port Harcourt. She has an academic and professional background spanning management, organizational leadership, and media-related institutional practice. She returned to academia after several years of professional experience and is currently at the thesis stage of her PhD program. Her research examines the intersection of reverse mentoring, organizational identity, and digital transformation within media institutions in South Nigeria, with particular attention to how generational knowledge flows influence institutional adaptation in the digital age. You're welcome, Marjorie.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And the third scholar we're having is Obed Hilsham, who is a researcher whose works intersects cognitive linguistics, gender studies, queer theory, and biblical studies with a focus on marginalized communities. Obed advocates for perspectives from the margins, challenging narratives and adding complexity to societal lenses. Their fascination with the role of language in shaping our world drives them to examine how linguistic structures influence our perceptions meticulously. You're welcome, Obed.
Thank you, Dr. Diego. Pleasure to be here.
Okay. Like I said, I'm not doctor yet, but I'll be pursuing it. To acknowledge the newest doctor in the space is the chair of the Ica Nigeria, who defended her PhD yesterday. Do I call her Dr. Ekaite George? You're most welcome, Madam Chair. Please give us an introductory remark before we go straight into the conversation. You're most welcome. We can't hear you yet.
Thank you very much.
Please, could you unmute yourself?
Thank you for kindly putting me on the spot this early on, Mr. Diego. Thank you all so much. I very warmly welcome everyone to the Ica Nigeria Quarterly Seminar Series. This is our 12th edition, and we couldn't have had better guests coming in to share on their insights on AI with us as a community. I also thank all the other members of our community who have joined us and those who will be joining us later. Of course, certainly some are trying to join, but due to internet interruptions have been coming in and off, on and off. So I want to, just as my own remarks, to say that I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to hear from Professor Teresa and Professor Dandara. I know that we have a lot to learn from them, but also a lot to share with them. Welcome them to our community. Ica Nigeria is a vibrant community of communication scholars and practitioners, and it's quite interdisciplinary. And I believe that this is what we need as not just a community of scholars, but as a country. Right now, AI is everything, and Nigeria seems to not have caught up, as some other countries as well in the global south. So this will be an interesting session. I really hope that it turns out to be one that we'll not forget in ICA Nigeria, because of course we have the best among us. So welcome to the two lead speakers and to our student speakers who will be taking on the discussion, and we'll just need to get on and enjoy the session. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So we'll go straight to the conversation. I'm going to take first opening remarks, 5 minutes each from Teresa and Professor Dandara. Then, I'll start with Teresa. So what are the opportunities that exist for AI in scholarly research? What, from your experience, what are the opportunities?
Well, yeah, as I said, thank you so much. Well, the opportunities that we've been having are, from the communication perspective, have been enormous. Well, the first one, as the title of the series says, it's AI adoption, right? So, but to adopt it, we need to understand it first. So how people are understanding this new technology with all the implications, how they are referring to it, what are the narratives, okay? So that's from the citizens' perspective, just plain citizens or end users' perspectives. Or how do we develop a more empowered citizens and users? So for that, for people's understanding and critical adoption, or adopting it in a more critical way, we also have to deal with governance, right? And with issues of transparency and opacity. So that's another area in which we've been working very hard, because regulations are being discussed as well in our country, but also in our region, in different countries of our region. So trying to understand how people are dealing with the regulations elsewhere, to not only adopt frameworks from Europe or the US or China, which are pretty much the three big areas or frameworks in which this is being discussed. So our challenge from the developer's perspective, from the policymaker's perspective, it's to develop our own frameworks, right? And to develop our own approaches and regulations that are situated in our context. Because we have realized in the past 3-4 years, just with AI, but previously with other digital technologies, is that the adoption, the understanding, and the governance are shaped by our historical situations, political situations, economic situations, social situations. For example, in Chile, there are strong economic inequalities, but very high technology penetration. Okay, we are leading in AI preparedness. We have a Latin American index of artificial intelligence preparedness, and Chile leads that. But at the same time, we have very strong socioeconomic inequalities, and we also have very strong socioeconomic inequalities, and very high distrust in institutions, okay, in public institutions in general. So we've been realizing that people, for example, to discuss regulations and how people understand AI and how we develop some governance from the companies and from the state, people tend to trust machines, tend to trust AI. They trust it because they work, and if it's not working now, They trust that it will work, okay? They trust the machine. However, so they don't demand much to the companies. They don't demand here in Chile much to the state. They don't demand much transparency. When we think about AI in abstract terms, when we think about AI as a general technology, okay, there is not much demand on transparency. However, when we ask people like end users, citizens, normal citizens, or policymakers or developers to think about specific systems with which they interact on a normal basis, okay, generative AI, ChatGPT, or when they have to think about AI that it's being used in the public sector, when they have to think about specific systems, the demand for transparency, the demands for fairness, the demands for greater governance or more regulation appears, okay? And we think that it's because we have high penetration, people tend to trust in machines. However, we have low trust in institutions and in public institutions. So that's where they start to distrust the technologies when they think of them as part of a larger institutional framework. That's one of the, so in order not to, because I can talk more about like shared narratives between end users, developers, and policymakers, but those are the areas that I think that are key in our communication scholarship. How we develop literacy, how we develop literacy to develop greater literacy. We have to understand how people talk about it, how people understand it, but at the same time, we cannot just rely on the user's perspective or on the user's literacy perspective. We also have, because of the opacity, develop regulations and frameworks, and we need to understand the developer's perspective in our context, the policymakers in our context, because all of them, and this is just to finish, because all these different stakeholders, we have realized with our research, see AI see themselves and ourselves as test subjects, as experimental subjects of a larger system. End users, we see ourselves as experimental subjects of larger companies, of the state. Developers talk about AI as a sandbox nation. I can talk more later about this. As a sandbox nations, those are narratives that are very situated. And policymakers also talk about Chile or Latin America as the playground for AI development. So there are plenty of areas in which we can do research. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Teresa. That's a beautiful opener. Yeah, and instantly it seems we share a lot of similarities, especially in many parts of Africa. So I'll go also to Professor Dandaura. He also is doing a lot with the African unions in respect of developing things that are Africa-centric. So, Prof, what are those opportunities available for us in scholarship, in introducing AI in scholarship?
Well, thank you very much. It's interesting to listen to Teresa speak as if she's an African. Same governance challenges you're talking about, they exist probably in bigger threatening dimensions in our climate. But looking at the audience we have, let me begin with a simple truth that sometimes we forget. You know, AI did not create communication. it also did not teach us, Nigerians, to persuade, mobilize, how to manage reputation and all that. You know, it can't teach us how to build communities. We've done all that long before algorithms, through town criers, market square, radio, drama, protests, you know. But because we are in a society where we drift more to laziness because the body likes gratification, sometimes we surrender what we are masters of to technology. And this is where the issue is. First, let's look at what AI is doing for us. It's not completely a bad thing for us as communication scholars and professionals, you know, because AI is the new thing holding the talking drum. So let's talk about the good sides first of all. You know, now the first thing is that it gives us speed and scale. There's no doubt about that, because AI helps us to collapse time. Tasks that you take long to do, you might do it in 15 minutes, 10 minutes. But the danger there is, does it carry my culture along in doing those things? This is where governance issues come in, and I'll return to that. But the second thing is that it helps us to have better evidence-based communication, because you can now compare systems, you can compare situations, and you can probably access more information than we used to have as communication professionals. As scholars, it means that it can give us opportunity to analyze large volumes of media content, whether it is newspaper, broadcast, or whatever. That is very helpful for researchers. So, and this strengthens theory building and helps practitioners to move beyond intuition to data-informed decision. That is one of the benefits of AI to us as professionals in the communication sphere. The third thing, and probably most important, is that in Nigeria, I don't know about elsewhere, good communication has often been limited by cost. AI lowers that barrier. Students, non-governmental organizations, small and medium scale industries, and even government MDAs, they can now access tools that once belonged only to the global firms. And this is democratization of the professional tools that we work with. But the main issue is, if as Nigerian professional, sorry, Tracy, I'll also be talking more about Nigeria because of the audience we have here. You know, I mean, if as Nigerian communicators and professionals, we have very little understanding of the fact that somebody has put those things that we access. And that means that we need to ask the question, the person that has put the information that we're accessing, does he understand my environment? Does he understand my the background? Does he have the same interests with me? Or I am just a consumer, just as Teresa has said. That is one of the first challenge. The issue of whose narrative is being pushed as we play on AI, as we leverage the information it provides to do what we have to do, whether it is research or communication generally. You know, so the first challenge is epistemic laziness. You know, most of our researchers, they submit their creativity, their thought processes to machine-generated work. You know, there's a even for media reporters now, there's a strong temptation to push content without thinking. We just feel that we don't need to sit again to plan to write a news story. We can just ask AI to create news story, and it does that for us. We don't even have the patience to go through and make it our own. You know, so that is a very big problem. It makes us very lazy. AI can write, yes, but it cannot think ethically or understand our complex problems and social realities. The second challenge is that we are losing our voices and the context. you know, I have said it that AI is trained with non-African data. It doesn't even recognize most of the critical terms in Africa. Example is with a perception survey that was done in South Africa recently. Now, the exclamation marks, as an African, when I say, hey, my Nigerian friends here know whether I am
We lost you there, Prof.
Is it? Okay. I thought it was me.
Prof, we're losing you, the internet. Okay.
I'm happy or whatever.
That's one of the challenges.
Don't know because I'm
challenges.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Exactly. We are also borrowing technology. Can you hear me better?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me better?
Yes,
okay.
Your
So I was
sensitivity
talking about
a
a perception survey.
That is making us lose our voices, and then there's a perception of it.
Exactly. So it doesn't have our nuances. And so when you rely on it, it gives you information that will not be useful to our context. Now, the other point is the issue of trust, which Teresa has talked about, and I've seen in the chat room, many have said it's the same in Nigeria. We trust machines more than human beings because of a long history of betrayal and failure. So it's easier to trust technology. It's easier to trust somebody who is behind a device that you don't know. You know, so that is a major problem, the issue of trust, ethics, and accountability. So coming from this background where public trust in institutions is very fragile, AI-driven misinformation, manipulation, or undisclosed automation can do serious damage. In communication practice, credibility is everything. Once trust is lost, no tool, no matter how intelligent, can restore it. So AI is further exposing a long-standing gap in Nigeria.
Yeah.
The divide between scholarship and practice. As usual, academic research often struggles to speak directly to practice. Practice is normally faster, you know, so they are hardly at the same pace. AI has widened that gap because unless scholars translate theory into usable frameworks and practitioners invest in ethical competence, it's not just about technical skills. Let me round up before you lose me again.
Okay.
Communication without culture is manipulation. And this we must bear in mind whether we are researchers or communicators. We must begin to talk about how do we adapt AI to Nigerian realities so we don't just blindly import it. We also need to understand that AI cannot replace us as communicators. It cannot think better than us if they are issues that have to do with our lives. So contextualizing messages, acting ethically will ensure that we are a step ahead of AI because AI is still learning emotional intelligence. Probably when we move to next generation models, then it will have taken part of this component of emotional intelligence. But the future belongs to scholars who can use AI to deepen theory, not escaping from thinking, to practitioners who can deploy AI to strengthen trust and not to manufacture noise. Bottom line, I agree that AI is not our enemy. It is when we adopt it uncritically that it becomes our enemy. Thank you very much, Diego.
Thank you very much, Prof. That's beautiful. I've got quite some sound bites, quotable. AI is not our enemy, and we should use it to deepen our theory. Communication without culture is manipulation. Okay, so now I'll still come back now, Teresa, the issue of ethics in communication research when we're now using AI. Like I said at the beginning, AI has got a bad name everywhere because of the issues of bias and all that you've listed, bias, and all of that. What are the ethical approaches to the deployment of AI in communication research that you've, from your experience?
Okay, so are you the question is regarding the crafting of the scholarship, right? From I can tell the challenges that we are having from an editorial perspective. For example, running the Journal of Computer Mediated Communication. That's what you mean, or more in general?
Well, more, so there may be different layers of integration of AI in research. What are the best practices you've noticed in integration?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to start by an honest perspective, okay? We are learning through this process, okay? It's hard at this point to have like strict ethical standards, or like it's important to have strict ethical standards, but the guidelines that we are using for people or to develop good scholarship, we are still learning, okay? 2 years ago, we would be very skeptical, okay? But now we have, but it's as Professor Dandura said, we cannot, it's not our enemy, and the important thing is to adopt it critically, right? Because AI is being embedded and ingrained in every single parts of our like digital lives, right? So we really don't know where it's playing a part. So so in order to develop good ethical standards to do communication research, I would say that one thing from the researcher perspective, then we can talk about more about the editorial and governance, but from the researcher's perspective, it's important the acknowledgement, okay? The acknowledgement of to what extent we are using these technologies. Also, it's important to understand these technologies, okay? And be careful on permissions of whether people know, like on permissions regarding uploading files into the systems, because we're feeding the systems with things that don't have permissions to be fed, for example. And from for example, from the reviewer's perspective, when people review things without a critical understanding of these, people may upload articles or data sets without asking for permission to do it, okay? And if we, so we are feeding the system without any permission. And that's a critical issue from an ethical perspective, because we have copyright issues, we have issues of data privacy, etc. Also, when we are doing our own research, it's important to craft these questions, to have these questions, and to discuss them, to put them on the table, right? We have encountered issues of fabricating a lot of information and a lot of content based on AI. And now AI many times may give us or may show some problems, or AI may sorry, do you get distracted with the noise? Do you get the noise, or it's just me?
We'll get, okay, the noise of people joining.
Yeah. Is it possible to mute that? Because it's hard to do.
Let's see if we can.
so that it's important to like develop these ideas, critically think about it, okay? So at this point, to be totally honest, in communication scholarship, we are learning through the process, we are developing guidelines, we are developing tools, but so we are relying. So as we learned through a community, through these discussions, through what are the frontiers of this, what are the limits of this, we have to rely on our own ethical standards, on people's ethical standards, okay? So that's why it's important to empower people, critically think, understand how these technologies work, who are the owners, if we are doing open science or not. All those issues are critical to discuss, to do good, high quality scholarship, okay? As we develop better guidelines that are changing by the day. Yeah, I can say that for now and I can come back later.
Well, thank you very much. I
can tell you like a lot of experiences, more detailed experiences, but as a framework, just to be, we are developing these, things are changing, we are relying on our own ethical standards, and so yeah, so it's been a challenge, and that's why, and I'm sorry to come back, and that's why I think it's critical to have these discussions, to develop guidelines, to develop norms, regulations, and we cannot rely just on laissez-faire here, right? But we are going through that a lot.
Yeah.
And just because as in our countries, it's hard to do it by ourselves, we need to develop collaboration. We need to be we need to see what others are doing, what are the challenges that others are having, and how they are sorting out those challenges in developing these guidelines, in developing these norms. Because when we have them, it's easier. In other like in many disciplines, in communication, still in communication, it's been like a century, like we have 100 years at least of developing many of these ethical standards. And now we have to adapt again. But there are issues that are key at the core. There are tensions that are at the core of our scholarship, which is data privacy, which is copyrights, we basically that. So we things are changing as we have never seen before, I would say, and these discussions are really important. But whether we have like a very clear-cut norm at this point, I would lie if I tell you that we do have it, because we don't. We are learning.
Wow. Thank you very much. And I love the candor in that, yeah, we're learning, but you've given us a few things that we should acknowledge. To what extent we're using AI. We should ensure there are permissions, because there are issues of copyright, issues of privacy, and then empowering people, to really know how critically they can think about the technologies they are using, so that they make informed judgments. Yeah. Yes, so now down the